What's up, motherfuckers? Arjun Erigaisi is one of the best players in the world. Until here, he haven't any spot in the candidates. So this is the last chance that he have to qualify for the candidates tournament, and he starts so well the tournament with a very good victory against Martin Petrov. So let's analyze his game because I really like how he outplays this Bulgarian player. Okay, Erigaisi open with c4, knight f6, knight c3. That's the e5. That's the reverse Sicilian, knight f3, knight c6. Okay, that's the main position of the reverse Sicilian. Here we have many options. For example, e4 could be one possibility, choosing more a close position. G3 just fianchetto de vice, playing like a dragon. For example, here d5 takes, and bishop g2 in a dragon, yes, a dragon system. E3 was another possibility, followed by queen c2, for example. A3 was another option that I faced like 2 years ago. D5 takes queen c2. But here Erigaisi choose the move d4. Just open the position, going directly. Okay, pawn takes, knight takes, bishop b4, d6, and here Martin decides to just take the knight, like in a Rosorimo more or less, b take. And now Martin goes so aggressive, just trying to take the c4 pawn. Here he could just go sword castle, followed by d6, playing in a, well, here I don't know if this is because the c6 knight is hanging, but I don't know, maybe 95 here, playing in a more solid way. For example, d6 here was fine too, bishop here and bishop d7. This could be a more solid continuation. But he goes so directly and just try to take the c4 pawn. And Erigaisi just sacrificed the pawn, but not the c pawn. He sacrificed the e pawn. Very interesting move here, e4. There are no so much games with e4. There are like just two games with e4. One between Nepo and Giri in 2020. Very interesting pawn sacrifice e4. And here the best option is just not accept the sacrifice and just go short castle like Anis Giri. F3, d6, and for example h4, and here rook e8 was the best. And Giri played bishop e6 against Nepo, and the game finally in a draw. But black shouldn't take on e4. He has to play more, yes, more solid without take the pawn. The problem of take the pawn, like Petrov did, is that just what Rigaisi plays. Bishop d2. Now White is going to develop all the pieces with tempos, and White is going to take the advantage in development. And apart, the c8 bishop is going to have some troubles to be developed. And this knight is going to be misplaced on e5, and the bishop pair are going to put some troubles into black position. So I don't recommend that if you reach this position to take the pawn. And in general, if you should choose between uh, a normal position or take a pawn and but give counterplay to your opponent, I always prefer to just keep a solid position without taking any pawn. But because in general, it's better to have more development just a simple pawn. Of course, each position is completely different. And in some position, it's just better to take the pawns. But in this position, I don't really like 94. I prefer just play more solid with short castle. So Petrov goes with 94, bishop d2, um, knight f6, of course, I'm attacking your knight. And now very interesting, queen e2, because, okay, if black castles, black is not going to have any problems. After castle d6, black is completely fine, but the idea of Erigaisi is give this check with queen e2. Of course, you never want to go to f7, so queen e7 looks like the only move. Queen takes, king takes, and now the key move with c5. Very important move, not allowing this bishop to be developed with normally. And here Petrov reacts so well with d5, trying to open the bishop. Rook, if the problem, for example, if you make a normal move like rook a, finally you should end playing d5 to open the bishop. You cannot play with this closed bishop. But here, okay, we have takes and knight b5 or bishop f4. So d5 directly was great. C takes. Here you guys play rook b1. You can play short castle first and then rook b1, but okay, rook b1 was fine. Bishop d7, short castle. And here Petrov made a huge mistake with bishop c6. I don't like this move. I think that it's just better to still developing rooks. Okay, he maybe play bishop c6 because looks like white is attacking the b7 pawn, who is true. But here the material is not going to be so important because with black you just will need to develop the rest of your pieces. And apart, if you play rook a c8, okay, white can take on b7, but now you are attacking the c3 pawn. For example, if bishop b7, knight b7, rook b7, now rook b7, no, rook c3. So here white should play or knight b5 or bishop f4, something like that. But okay, black is more or less solid here. Or if bishop f4, d5. Don't try to hold this position. Or it's more or less equal. But the problem of bishop c6 is okay, you are defending the pawn, but you are still without the bed of the rook and your position is still being so passive. And the d6 pawn is going to be full. You should just try to still developing the pieces. Bishop c6, rook e8, good move. King d8. And here was a strong idea, just okay, because Erigaisi first take on c6 and to later play knight f5. But was a strong idea play knight f5, keeping the b7 pawn on. Yes, keeping the pawn on b7 to who could be a target in the future. Because okay, after you take here and b takes, now the b7 pawn is never more a target. So for that reason, I prefer to just keep these bishops and try the bishop on g2, keeping the weakness on b7. But okay, with bishop c6 and knight f5, he is still having the advantage, of course. And knight f5, attacking d6, so finally attacking d6 and g7. So finally, white is going to take back the pawn. And a Paris. Not only that, he's going to take back the pawn. Let's see, the four white pieces are perfectly placed and the rooks are still undeveloped, and he have a knight in the corner and the king in the center. So the white position is close to be winning. Rook e8, and here very important move of Erigaisi, playing rook d1. You have yes, a safer king, yes, more developing advantage, but especially black have problem with his king, so you should just keep pieces over the board to increase the problems against the black king. Because if there are like two pieces over the board per each side, the king is not going to suffer. But with more pieces over the board, more weak is the black king. So very good move rook d1, knight d5, knight d6, rook e8. And here Legacy made two mistakes in a row who give black the option of return to the game and still fighting. Here he played knight b7, who is a little bit strange because you are trading good knight for a bad knight in the corner, who is the a5 knight, and at the same time you are yes, you are losing the option or just take a pawn. So this move, knight b7, was a little bit strange. Of course, he have the idea of enter with the rook in the same file, but I prefer to just keep the a5 knight in the corner and just still taking pawns. For example, knight f7 and then return to e5. Looks the most natural, and the knight still being bad place on straight place on e5. Sorry, he have no time to gain to c4. So knight b7 a little bit strange, knight takes, and here just was stronger. Just take the knight king e8 and bishop e3 and white is winning. That's the most logical. But the guy is still playing so strange and trying to make the things like more difficult. So he plays c4, a little bit strange move because I suppose that he played knight b7 with the idea of enter with the rook to the 7th rank, who is always useful. But no, he not enter with the rook to the 7th rank, a little bit strange. He played c4, knight d6. The Erigaisi idea is open the center, but he play a little bit strange. Bishop f4, okay, white is still having the advantage, but now it's not so huge. But now black make yes, a huge mistake. Placing the king in a dark square is the huge problem of the position. He should play like 94, sorry, fuck, 94, rook d5, and now place the king in a light square, not in a dark square. And then the plan is came to g8 with the king. And okay, you are able to defend the a7 pawn on the a pawn, you can draw. So this could give black huge drawing chances. The problem is that he played king e7, placing the king in a dark square. The problem of that is that after rook d5, rook d8, bishop a3, now the bishop is coming to c5 to check the king and put some troubles. So that's the problem of having the king in the same color of the opponent bishop. So for the reason he should came to e8 to leave the yes to leave the black diagonal. For example, if a6 here, I suppose that bishop c5 is coming, and with white you cannot be moved. For example, if king here, for example, here rook b1 could be strong, or rook b6. There are many moves so interesting. Or for example, there is another option of bishop b6 first, and later bishop c5. But in general, here white have many options. Other could be just rook d1, rook b6, attacking the pawn. The problem is that all the time bishop c5 is coming here. I really like rook b6, attacking the pawn and pinning the knight, putting more pressure over the knight. So he goes with king 8, but the problem is that after bishop e7 now the position is winning because this pawn is so strong with the help of the bishop. The bishop is so good in open position, and when you have pawns in the A and H files in the rook files in general, and the bishop gains more value. So yes, yes, here black is just winning. The last black mistake was 94, but okay, I understand that here black position is of course unpleasant. So king e7, rook d5, rook d8, yes, king e8 here, and just bishop e7 and just white is winning. I'm going to show us the rest of the game more or less fast, but now there is no so important because Erigaisi trades one pair of rooks. Yes, he just completely wins. He traded the other pair of rooks and the position with the bishop. But the problem is that the pawn is so far from the other pawns. Uh, and in this type of position, the bishop gains so much value. If this pawn instead of being on c2 was on d2 or something on a2, instead of on a2 on d2, the knight have his possibilities of defend the pawn. But the problem is that the pawn is also far advanced. So it's also far from the rest of the pawn, sorry. Now he just played one pair of pawns, and now he entered with his king. So very good game to Erigaisi, who advanced to the third round of the World Cup. I think that he's one of the favorites of win the tournament and qualify to the candidates. So let's see how the tournaments continue. Bye bye, motherfuckers.